Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel called Root Cause. Today we are in the community of Great Park in Irvine, California. Great Park used to be a Marine Corps base, El Toro Marine Corps base, and they used to have fighter jets here and do a lot of training during the Cold War. When the Cold War ended in 1990, the government turned over this land to civilian use. And so ever since then, um, a lot of builders came in and built up this former Marine Corps base into expensive housing area. Today we're going to talk about uh, the root cause of why things are the way they are, and hopefully I can inspire people to come up with solutions to the problems in their lives. A lot of times people run across problems and they only see the surface. Uh, they don't understand why things are the way they are, and oftentimes I found that there's always a root cause to problems, and once you find out the root cause, you ask the right questions, you can come up with the right answer. So the question today is about our economy and the housing prices. Why is it so high? um, why is the rent price so high? My landlord just raised my rent by $320. So now my rent is about more than $3,500 a month for a townhouse. It's about 1,700 square feet only. It's very small. We share walls with other homes, uh, and it costs that high. Um, an average house here in Irvine, California, a median price home, is now $1.3 million. 1.3 million. Uh, Now, people often ask, a lot of people, even the people in the real estate business, um, some don't even know. They can't even define what is a bubble. A lot of them disagree with us having a bubble right now in the housing market. Uh, and it's so simple, and yet they don't see it, okay? It's very simple, okay? Anytime the cost of housing is more than a third of the median monthly income of that area, then we're in a bubble. Then the house is inflated. Okay, it's very simple because the local people earns local salary. Okay, and if they have to spend more than a third of their monthly salary on housing, how can they be happy? It's unstable. Most likely, they might default. Okay, depending on how high. Um, that's the reason why banks do not lend money to buy a home if your monthly income cannot support the uh, the monthly payment. Okay, it's one third of your monthly income must go into paying for housing, whether it's rental or um, mortgage. Okay, if you take a look behind us here, all these homes, these are on top of each other, right? They're 3 stories high. They're on top of each other, and guess how much they cost each house here? Okay. Some of these homes are like 2,000 square feet. Okay, and they're on top of each other. Guess how much they cost? Each of these houses is now $1.6 million. 1.6 million. And guess what the average household income in Irvine is? It's about 100 grand a year. Household. Okay. So you do the math. If a person makes 100 grand a year, then he brings in about $10,000 a month in salary. Now, not even counting taxes, because we all have to pay tax, right? So without even counting taxes, even if he has all that $10,000 for him disposable income, a third of that will be $3,300 a month that he can use to pay for housing here. And I just told you earlier that my rent now is $3,500 a month. $3,520 to be exact. So if I make the average or the median household income of 100 grand, I'm barely making it, right? Because I'm supposed to be only paying $3,300, but now I have to pay $3,500, and that's just a rental. Okay, if I were to buy a home here, remember I told you earlier, a median price of a house now here in Irvine is $1.3 million. Okay, you do the math. You go in to mortgage calculation, pull it up on Google, and you put in the numbers. Okay, a $1.3 million house, the monthly payment, depending on what you put down, most people don't even have 20% down, but let's say they put down 20%. Okay, their monthly mortgage payment is still going to be about $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and that's not counting tax, property tax, and Mello-Roos on top of HOA. What is Mello-Roos? Mello-Roos is a tax on top of a property tax that people pay in Irvine to take care of the roads and the shrubs and the trees, well manicured, because this entire location was desert. There's nothing here. Okay, that's why they built a military base here, because there's nothing here. There's nobody here. But now that they have to make it into a housing, they have to plant trees, right? They have to plant grass and shrubs and all that stuff. Where do you get the money from? Well, the money comes from what they call Mello-Roos tax. Okay, so that's on top of the property tax, plus 2 HOA. If you live in this community, there are 2 HOAs. Okay, each costs about $150. So you do the math. Okay, it's about $300 or maybe even $400 a month on top of that. So all in all, if you look at living here, not only do you have to pay the mortgage. Okay, if you buy a $1.3 million house here, the mortgage would be about $4,000 or $5,000. On top of that is another grand for property tax, okay, Mello-Roos tax, and HOAs, 2 HOAs. So you add on top of that. So you're looking at $5,000-$6,000 or more a month in order for you to be able to buy a house here in Irvine. The median income here cannot support that. Okay, so how do people cope here? They still, for a few years now, they still sell a lot of homes here. Okay, what caused this? Okay, remember I told you before, we gotta find out the root cause, okay, before we can find out the answer, because it reached a point where it's critical now. Okay, a lot of people have been driven out of their homes. Some just moved to other states, okay, to escape this cost of living, which then caused other states to go higher, right? Think about it. Californians moved to many states, including Arizona, obviously, because it's close by, Nevada, close by, but also as far as North Carolina, Texas, Tennessee now, okay? Because the cost of living is so high here that they just have to move. Well, what happens when they move over there? Okay, they sell a house here. Let's say they own a house for a long time. If they're from here, if they grew up here, most likely they bought a house here years ago, 20 years ago, and the average house here back then in Southern California is only $300, okay? Maybe even $400, okay? Now they wait 20 years later, and that same house now is twice that or even 3 times that amount, okay? So they make good money, okay? So then if they decide to move over to places like Tennessee or Texas, those places are cheaper. So let's say, look at Tennessee. A $400,000 house in Tennessee is big, okay? $400,000-$500,000. So that's what happens. They bring their money over to all the states, and they bought homes there, which jack up the price there. The locals that live there can't afford it, especially the new ones that just got out of school. They just grew up and they started working. Their salary is tied to the local economy, right? The local economy. They don't get paid $120,000 a year. Of course not. It's tied to the local going rate. So then they are priced out of a home, the young people. You see that? So it has a domino effect because the house here costs so much money, costs people to move over there. Now back to what is the root cause? What caused all this to go higher for Californians? which then caused them to go move somewhere else. Okay, a lot of people don't recognize this and they deny it. They don't see it. Well, I've been here a long time. Okay, I've been California here for 10 years now. I see what's going on. Okay, the reason why the price of homes became so high here started around 2012. Now you got to remember, 2008 was a Great Recession, right? What caused the Great Recession? Subprime mortgage, right? People overextend themselves. Okay, they got loans that they can't really afford. Okay, but they got approved anyways. So when the housing bubble burst, they can't afford it, so they had to sell the home. They went bankrupt, whatever. That caused the housing bubble to burst. A lot of banks went under during that time, and so there was a big change. You know, the federal government came in and forced the lenders to have higher standards of approval for loans. So at that time, by around 2010, was when the approval rate for home loans was like very, very strict. So unless you have at least 20% down for a house, you're not going to be able to get approval for a loan. Very few people can buy homes at that time. Very few Americans. Okay, I was here at that time. Okay, and so I went and looked at homes. You know, and at that time they were trying to get the economy going again because the recession. Nobody's working. Everybody's in debt. You know, banks are not approving any loans. So they're trying to get the economy going again, and builders start to build homes. Who are they going to sell it to? I remember going to these open houses, and they gave us all kinds of food, you know, free food, drinks or whatever to attract buyers. Problem was, banks weren't lending money. And so the houses at that time were languishing. My wife came from this area, and she knows that in California, houses are built pretty quick because, you know, people buy homes very quickly here. But at that time, they couldn't buy home quickly because the loans weren't going through. So at the same time, the Chinese economy, the economy in China was doing great. Okay, U.S. economy went down, China's economy went up. Okay, productivity went up. And so a lot of Chinese investors started to come here to the United States to buy property. Why? Because I bet a lot of people still don't know this. Okay, you cannot own land in China. Okay, you cannot. You can buy a house in China, but you cannot buy the land underneath the house. That's owned by the Chinese government. Okay, and they say that's owned by the people of China. Okay, collectively, it's a communist country. Okay, and so a lot of Chinese investors that have some money, they come here to buy homes because they say, hey, I can actually own the land underneath the house, you know, that I own. And U.S. properties usually, you know, are safer than the Chinese properties. So for those who can afford it, they came here. So starting around 2012 was when they come here in droves and start buying up homes. And a lot of them have so much money that they actually pay cash for these homes. Okay. As a result, the price of home here skyrocketed. And it skyrocketed ever since. Okay. So then what happens after that? All right. The homes start to skyrocket. The locals that have owned homes here before, you know, because they grew up here, they had jobs here, they bought homes way back, you know, paying only $300,000 for the homes. All of a sudden, their prices, their home value went up to $600,000, okay, for example, or even $800,000. So some of them sold it. They're like, why not? I'm gonna upgrade, right? You know, I only paid, you know, my loan was only for $300,000. I've been here for 20 years. You know, I only have 10 more years to pay off my $300,000 home. Why don't I just get a bigger house now? So then they sold, you know, they make twice as much or even 3 times as much. And then they go out and they buy homes here. Again, that jacks up the price. That sustains the increase in pricing, okay? 10 years of that, and here we are. You know, houses here became so high that a median salary cannot afford a median price home here. It's ridiculous. It's shameful. Okay. You know what I blame? I blame the government for this. Okay, because No country on earth does this to their citizen. Did you know that? If you go to China, you can't even buy homes in China because you're not a Chinese citizen. And even if you were a Chinese citizen, you can't even buy the land underneath that house. You cannot own that. Okay? Well, why are they doing that? Okay? Well, first of all, it's a communist country, right? But the reasoning makes sense. Think about it. How do you take somebody's land? Either you invade that country, right, and take over the land, or if you have money, you just buy up the land, fair and square, right? Think about it. If a country is so rich that they can just go in and buy another country's land, eventually that country become theirs, doesn't it? Legally, right? It's like, hey, you sold it to me, okay? I didn't beat you over the head with my army, right? You sold it to me. I own it fair and square. So that's the reason why a lot of countries do not let foreigners buy the land. Makes a lot of sense. But here's the problem with that. If you forbid people from buying land, you are not creating a robust economy, right? So like, for example, in 2010, here in the United States, when no Americans can get a loan for homes, they can't sell homes. Builders can't build homes because they can't sell homes, right? So if they can't build homes, they can't buy materials to build homes. They can't hire people to build homes, and it has a domino effect of stagnating the economy. Am I right? Because no jobs, right? Because when a house has a domino effect on everything else, right? Buying a house or selling a house, okay? Because guess what happens? When people buy a new house, what do? They go out and buy new furniture, don't they? To fit the new house, right? They also have to buy appliances, right? Refrigerator, washer, dryer, okay? The buying of those things get the economy going because the companies that build those things hire more workers to do that. So it gets the entire economy going. You see that? So then if you restrict the buying of homes, you really restrict the economy, okay? So then what happens if the local Americans can't buy homes at the time? You got to sell homes, okay? So that's why they sell it to foreigners, okay? So the foreigners came in, mostly Chinese, because at that time, the Chinese economy was going up, okay? People in China became more and more wealthy. They can afford to, okay? And so they came over here. And did you know this, by the way? Did you know this? How many people live in the United States? About 300 million, 350 million, right? Guess how many people in China are middle class? 300 million, okay? So the Chinese middle class almost equal the population of the United States. That's how big their buying power is, okay? Because China has 1.4 billion people, okay? About 300 million of those are middle class or upper middle class. That means they have the money to buy. So then, of course, they came here to the United States. They came to Australia. They came to Canada. They came to England, United Kingdom, and they bought up all the properties, okay? Not their fault. I don't blame them, okay? Because if you have money, you do the same thing. Why not? What I blame are the authorities of that country that allow them to do that without any restrictions, okay? Now, let's go back to what I was saying about not allowing foreigners to buy land, buy home, okay? The Chinese government way of preventing that is to not allow any foreigners or anybody to buy land at all in their country, okay? But again, like I said before, that will restrict the economy, okay? Especially when we had a great recession. So they let foreigners buy. But here's what happens, Then in a few years, this home here, an average home, costs over $1 million, beyond the reach of local Americans, okay? And guess what happens? What's so devastating about that is the rental price usually lags behind the mortgage rate, right? The price of homes, okay? So if the price of homes goes up, eventually the rental price goes up too. Why? Because as the price of homes go up, more and more people can't afford to buy. Guess what? They have to rent. So more people, supply and demand. More people demand rentals, the rental price will go up, okay? It reached a point now where it's unsustainable. It's unlivable here in Southern California for an average local American that makes local salary, okay? Okay, so what's the solution? All right, root cause, now solution. Okay, other countries have gone through this before. They have ways of preventing the foreign buyers from jacking up the price so high that the locals became homeless. Okay, they impoverished by that. Okay, one way is like in Thailand. I think you can't own a house in Thailand unless you have a sponsor that is a Thai citizen. Okay, so this is why a lot of American men, the older guys, they go to Thailand and they marry a Thai woman, right? They marry a Thai woman. The title of the house is in her name too, and that allows them to buy the house. That is a mutually beneficial arrangement because these women now has a house, okay? Whereas before they can't even afford to buy a house, okay? Now they have a house, now they own a house, but it's beneficial for the American guy because he also could own a house, okay? So he could sell it, with her approval, of course, because they're married, right? And they can make some money off it, okay? So it's mutually beneficial arrangement, okay? That way, Thailand as a country, as a government, protect their citizen, don't they? They protect their citizen, right? Because the buying of homes must benefit the local people. Duh, right? It makes sense. Why would you let foreign buyers jack up the price so high that the locals are impoverished? They can't even own a house. They don't have a house to live in, like now. Okay, so you don't want to own a house. You can't afford to own a house. Fine. You can't even rent anymore because the rent went up so high. You see what I'm saying? It's extremely, extremely disheartening, dangerous for society because guess what? People talk about the shooting in Texas, right? Uvalde, Texas, okay? And what do they blame? They blame on guns again, right? We've been through this before, Newtown shooting for years now, Columbine, Virginia Tech, okay? Everywhere, all right? All the school shootings, but not only school shootings, check this out. People forget there's violence everywhere in America now, okay? Talk about root cause, right? Let's talk about root cause of the violence. We're not talking about just violence in school by kids shooting up other kids, okay, and teachers. We're talking about violence everywhere, road rage, okay? Road rage. When did road rage started to happen? I remember road rage became the rage in 1990, around 1990, here in California, okay? And the reason why is because living condition starting to become harsh, it's starting to become more and more difficult just to make a living. And so people are very, very pissed off, okay? They work 2-3 jobs and they still can't make a living. They still can't own a house. They still can't settle down, okay? So it becomes extremely harsh and then everything sets them off. Okay, one little thing sets them off, okay? We got not only road rage, we got mall shootings, we got church shootings, okay? Now we have hospital shootings, okay? We got shootings everywhere, theater, okay? There's nowhere that there's no shooting, okay? So the problem with the school shooting is not just the school shooting, okay? It's violence everywhere. Well, what caused violence? I gotta think about it. Do happy people shoot up other people? Only angry people, right? And not only angry people, it's not like they're angry for moments, something, but they're angry for a long time. They're angry for a long time and they feel isolated for a long time. So when they feel isolated for a long time and angry for a long time, it's human nature, okay? To not see everybody else as human like you. That's why it's so easy to kill another person, right? For these people. Because they don't see that those people identify with them. In fact, bullies, right? People who are bullied, kids that are bullied usually think that way because they shunned, right? They loners, okay? When they become loners, then they're isolated. They don't identify with, other people. So it's easy for them to pick up a gun and shoot indiscriminately because they're so pent up. Their anger is so pent up that they do that. But then what caused their anger? So you gotta understand what caused their anger. So you gotta drill down to the root of the problem, right? Like my channel says, root cause, okay? The root cause of all these anger in our society is the living. It's harsh, okay? It's harsh to afford to live now, okay? So for those people out there who are in charge of society, the solution to the school shootings and all the shootings in our society and all the violence, you know, is the cost of living. If you fix that, you fix the problem. Okay, it's not guns, because if you remove the guns, you still haven't removed the anger, right? Okay, and what usually happens is law-abiding citizens will oblige, will follow the law, will not own guns. But the criminals, by definition, they're criminals. They don't follow rules. Okay, so they're not going to say, okay, well, okay, government, if you told me not to own guns, I won't own guns. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna own the guns, and guess what? They're gonna hold us hostage because we now are not armed. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Not everybody's armed, but the criminals don't know that. You see that? If the criminals see that, hey, I don't know if this guy's armed or not, because the law does not restrict him from owning guns, I bet you think twice. He might fight back, you see. So it's actually safer, all right? I'm not a gun advocate, okay? I don't own guns, okay? At least not yet. Our society, maybe you get to a point where I have to. But the solution, if you look at it, is more than that. But a lot of people just refuse to look at the root problem. If they see the root problem, they're gonna see the solution, okay? You cannot live, okay? It's unlivable when the location, it costs you more than, I guarantee you here, people don't, the thing about Southern California is everybody's pretentious, right? Nobody admits that they're struggling. It's not cool, right? Everybody acts like they rich, okay? But in reality, they all struggle, okay? I wouldn't be surprised if most people here, most locally, people who work here with the local economy, in the local economy, they spend about 40, if not 50% of their income on housing. I wouldn't be surprised, okay? I wouldn't be surprised, or even more, okay? Because if you look at the way they spend, they're very thrifty, because they have to. Every time there's something free, there's 10 trillion people in line for it here, okay? It's because they have to stretch, okay, in order to even live. So when you have that, you have a lot of anger, a lot of distress, right? If not anger, then downright distress. You're stressed out. So anything small could tick you off. I mean, they have people that walk into fast food restaurants, don't get their way, and they throw Coca or drinks, hot drinks, at the face of these workers in there, okay? Because they've had it, okay? They've had it. That's the straw that kind of break the camel's back, so to speak, okay? And that now is nationwide. We living in a society now where a lot of people are very angry, okay? And the root of their anger is the cost of living. It costs so much. And during the past 30 years, oh, by the way, this is the result of globalization, okay? Globalization was marketed as a great thing 30 years ago, you know? And the reason why they market it that way is because the corporations that market that wanted to bring their factories over to China, to cheaper locations, so they can make more money. They don't have to pay as high of a salary or benefits as US workers. And so they market this globalization as a great thing. And so when it passed, all the jobs start moving over to China mostly, and later other countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh, whatever, okay, to take advantage of the lower salary of the workers there, okay? So they move they move all the jobs overseas, okay? And yet the housing, the cost of living here goes up. So you do the math. How are we as an average citizen in the United States survive when they take away the jobs, the income source, and they jack up the price of living? No wonder there's a lot of anger in this country, right? That's a root cause right there, okay? That is a root cause right there. So if you want to solve the root cause, you want to prevent violence in the school, you want to prevent road rage, you want to prevent mall shootings, you want to prevent church shooting, hospital shootings, violence everywhere, then you need to solve that problem. of the cost of living. Okay, and how to solve that problem? Like I said, what you need to do is implement a nationwide, okay, federal law, all right, federal law, okay, to protect the wealth of the average citizen in the United States. Okay, there are many ways of doing that. You know, other nations do it. Why can't we? You know, we are a robust economy. We are a market-driven, capitalistic economy. Keep that. Okay, don't implement laws that restrict buying. That's wrong. Okay, that's what China does, the Communist Party. You know, that's wrong. Like I said before, the reason why it's wrong is because it doesn't promote the movement of the market. Nobody's buying. Okay, you close off foreigners. Investments don't come to the United States. Not good. Don't do that. Okay, but what we could do is like Thailand or other countries where they tax. It's called a foreign buyers tax. Okay, what they do is they tax the foreign buyers the amount, okay, on top of the normal price of their house. Okay, and they use that tax revenue to help locals offset the cost of their buying. For example, okay, back to my example of the median income here in Irvine of $100,000 a year. Okay, a person that makes $100,000 a year can only afford about $3,000 to $4,000, if that. Okay, about $300 to $3,500 on housing, on mortgage. Okay, that means, okay, that means he can only afford a house that's about $500,000 or less. Okay, much more than that, and is a stretch. Okay, so then what happens? Okay, but then a house here costs $1.3 million. All right, that's a market rate. That's a going rate, supply and demand. Right? So what do? You force the builder to lower the price? No, you don't do that. That's not free market. Let the builder charge that price. Don't care. Okay, but the foreign buyers that come in here, and let's not forget, not only the foreign buyers, but the corporate buyers, okay? We're going to talk about that in a minute too. That caused the jacking up of the prices here, okay? $1.3 million for a home in Irvine. Fine. Let the foreign buyers buy 1.3, but they have to pay. They have to pay the difference in tax. Because what happens? They jack up the price of an average house from $600,000 to twice that much. See? So the tax should be $600,000 for a $1.3 million house for foreign buyers. Okay? They broke it, they fix it. Right? All right? They don't have to. Nobody's forcing them to buy it. They don't. If they think it's too expensive, then don't buy it. Okay? Unlike the locals here. Okay? If the locals can't have a house here, he can't live. He'd be out in the streets and become homeless, and becomes a problem to society, right? We have a big homeless problem right now in LA, and even here in Irvine. I see some homeless now in Irvine, okay? But in LA especially, it's because the price is too high there too, okay? But what does the government do? They do handouts, right? Did you know that LA County is spending about $4 billion US dollars, billion with a B, on the homeless problem, and they haven't even solved it. There's still homeless everywhere in LA. Because the way they solve it doesn't help. Okay? For one, I heard that each homeless person in LA gets something like $500 or $1,000 a month just to be homeless. So what happens? Homeless from other states that don't do that move to LA to take advantage of that, right? So people, criticize California. Oh, it's a liberal state. It's a liberal state, That's they created the problem. No. A lot of the people that say that, their states, okay, the people that live in their states became homeless. Why? Because jobs move overseas to China. The factories close down, okay? So they become homeless. What do? They move here to LA. They don't stay there because there's no benefits for them there. So they move to LA and become homeless so they can get $1,000 a month, $800 a month. You see that? Okay. So that's not a solution. Okay. And then they say, well, we're going to build, housing for homeless people. So they pay hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars to these builders that build these homes to house the homeless. What happens is that these people, these corporations, they build not enough homes, they pocket the rest, okay, and they give that money away under the table, bribe to the politicians that create this, okay, that has these programs. It doesn't solve anything, okay. Okay, it's just like cancer, a dreadful disease. By the time you get it, it's very difficult to get rid of it. Prevent it in the first place. And this is how you do it. You prevent it by taxing the foreign buyers, okay, commensurate with the amount that they jack up the price on. All right? Very simple, okay? So then, back to the example of a person that makes $100,000 a year here in Irvine. He can only afford a $500,000 house, but an average home here costs $1.3 million. He can still buy that house because guess what? The other 600, or so, the difference is paid for by the foreigner that jack up the price. Okay, so fair, isn't it? It's very fair. Okay, because the foreigner does not have to buy that house. He's not going to die if he doesn't buy the house. But the local would. He would be homeless. He would be impoverished if he can't afford, to live in a place. Okay, and like I said before, rent will go up commensurate with the housing prices. So there's nowhere to go. Basically, you can't buy, you can't rent. You see that? So back to what I was saying about corporate buyers. That's even more ridiculous. To allow corporate buyers are more unfair. Okay, here's what happens. Companies like BlackRock, okay, they have deep pocket. They have billions of dollars in their pockets. Okay, where do they get the money from? From the stock market, from investors that give them the money in the hope that they get a high return. So what happens? They take that money, they come to places like Irvine here, and they buy up homes on Florida. They buy up entire communities actually in Florida. Okay, they jack up the price, okay, to rent it out, and they price the homes, they price the locals out of the homes. That's not fair, is it? That's not capitalism. A lot of people, I read online talk about, they make it sound like they really understand capitalism and free market. No, they don't understand free market and capitalism. Okay, that is not fair. Okay, to allow corporate buyers deep pocket to compete against local workers that local salary is tied to the local place. That's not fair, is it? So there's got to be consequences, right? The corporate buyers, same thing. They have to pay the higher tax because they're corporate. They have the money, and they will cause poverty and homelessness if you allow them to do that. Like here, without any consequence. They pay the same price as everybody else. No, they can't. Okay? They can't. All right? No countries on earth do this. Okay? You go to any country, they don't do this because they know what would happen, to their citizens if this is allowed. So to sum up this video, I hope everyone understands the root cause. My channel is called Root Cause, of course, and I'm talking about the root cause of all these problems. Not only the problem of unaffordability of homes, but the repercussions of that down the line. And here's another thing too, a lot of people may not know. What is the number one reason for divorce? The number one reason for divorce is money. Okay? Lack of money. All right, not enough money. Husband and wife start fighting, and then they get a divorce. Okay? Well, why is there a lack of money? Okay? Well, there's a lack of money because the cost of living is too high. Well, why is the cost of living too high? Like I told you. Okay? What caused all this is allowing foreign buyers and corporate buyers free reign to buy whatever they want without any consequences. Okay? That's the cause. Okay? So what happens when you have divorce? Well, if you have kids, you break up the family. The kids are not going to be happy. They're going to, kids, they want to feel safe and tranquil in their growing up. They want both parents together, loving, so that they feel safe in the house. Okay? If that doesn't happen, and they have to move out, and it creates chaos in their lives, right? Because you may have visitation rights and this and that, but again, it creates chaos. They're not going to be happy. They might even be angry, depending on how the marriage breaks up. If there's a lot of animosity between the parents, a lot of fights all the time, right? And so that affects the kids because they see it, okay? And then they have to move around a lot, and they become angry and resentful. Then they start fighting with their parents, right? They, fighting with their mother. Just like the recent shooter in Uvalde, Texas, okay? He fought with his mom. He moved out. His mom's a single mom. Again, she has a boyfriend, right? But that's not his dad. Okay, he can't tell the guy what to do. He's not gonna listen, right? He's a teenager. They are defiant as it is, okay? So then he fought with his mom. So then he had to go and live with his grandmother. They got into a fight. He shot his grandmother, and then after that, he went and shot up everybody at the school. You see that? You see that? So what's the root cause of all this? Statistically speaking, right? Because we deal with a lot of people here, okay? We're not dealing with one or two cases. A lot of people, I notice also, they only look at the individual cases. I'm not looking at the individual cases. I'm looking at the whole population, okay? If there's so many people, okay, that can't afford to live, some will lash out, okay? So you got to solve the problem of the cost of living, okay? You got to solve the problem, okay? Not using handouts, because that causes other problems. If people don't go to work, they will not feel productive. They're going to cause trouble, okay? Okay? So it's not just, oh, well, you got to go to work and, no handout. There's a reason why you don't want to do handouts. There's a reason why you want a stable society. You're going to have people working and working towards something. Chances are, statistically speaking, studies have shown that people who own homes are much, much less likely to cause trouble. That's a fact. Look it up, okay? So you got to allow people the opportunity, okay, the real opportunity. Don't move jobs overseas. Come on, man. All right? Create or at least replace those jobs, those low-paying assembly jobs with other high-tech jobs and stuff. Then do it slowly because people need time to transition. We did it too fast in 30 years. Actually, less than 30 years, right? 30 years later is what caused this. But the move, it was like in like 1 or 2, 3 years, starting in the 1990s. In droves. It's always been, factories have always slowly moved overseas, but in droves it started to, in high numbers, okay? So then that's a solution, okay? Any politicians out there, any leaders out there, if you want to really solve the problem of shootings, school shootings, this is the root of the problem. The root of the problem is the cost of living, okay? And it takes a long time for any change of society to take effect, okay? So it took 30 years to get to this point, right? It started to happen, I'd say, about 20 years ago, when the violence started to escalate, okay? The violence started before, with the road rage, as it was, but then this compounds the problem. The moving of factories overseas, the jacking up of price of homes and cost of living, for everybody now caused this to happen, okay? So it's kind of late now, in my opinion, to all of a sudden tax. You can't just, tax foreign buyers right now that already bought homes in America. It's unfair, right? It's like, you can't retroactively tax those people. It's not fair, The rule wasn't like that when they bought. So the only thing you can do now is tax the new buyers. But then there's not many new buyers right now anymore, not from China, because the Chinese economy is going down. It is collapsing. And so then there are not too many Chinese that have disposable income to bring here in order to buy homes here. So that's kind of late. And to be honest with you, the only thing that would cause the housing price to go down in large numbers, unfortunately, is a war with China. I talk to all my friends who are either Chinese American or Chinese national. They all know this. The only people that don't know this are Americans that are not of Chinese descent or have no connection, not even friends with Chinese people, in order to see we are on a road to war against China. Okay? A little bit of research will tell you we are. Unfortunate. All right? But here's what's going to happen, okay, with the properties here. Okay? If we ever go to war with China, the properties are going to collapse in value. Why? because a lot of the homes that are owned by Chinese nationals will be sold. Of course, they have to sell because we had war and they're afraid that their property is going to be seized by the United States, which we could under the law called eminent domain. If we have a war with another country, those properties that are owned by foreigners of that country, or the people of that country, or the government of that country, will be seized, will be sold, will be forced to be sold. Okay, let's put it that way. If not, then the U.S. government could seize it. Okay, like we're doing right now. The world is doing right now to Russia, oligarch, right? They seize properties of oligarchs, you know, multi-million-dollar yachts, right? Hotels, you know, very expensive stuff. So, you know, they can do that. So don't think that the U.S. government cannot do that. Yes, you can, and there's a law that allows us to do that. It's called eminent domain. Look it up. Eminent domain. Look it up. All right. So then, that's the only thing at this point I see that could bring down the price of housing in the United States to the correct level. And what is the correct level? Like I said, the correct level, the stable level, is a level where a median price house jives with the median income. Okay, I gave you an example earlier. All right, a lot of even real estate. I mean, I see guys, you know, real estate supposedly guys on YouTube don't know, you know, what the price should be. Oh, what should it be? Should it be $300,000? Should it be $400,000? No, the amount of money is irrelevant. It is based on the income. Okay, and here it is. Okay, so in general, okay, if the price of a median price house, of a median size house in a location is more than 5 times the annual income of the median salary, then you have a bubble. Then it's not sustainable, it's not affordable. Okay, why? Because 5 times means that he has to spend more than a third, you know, a lot more than a third of his monthly income on mortgage. That's why. It's very simple. Okay, it's very simple. You know, don't talk about the amount, because the amount of an average home here in Irvine or Southern California is a lot higher than the average income anywhere else. So is the average price of homes, right? Okay, the average income, the household income in Irvine is over $100,000, but the average in the United States is half of that. So you can't say, well, should it be $300,000, $4,000 home, $600,000 home? Is that, no, it's irrelevant. Okay, irrelevant. So with that gauge, you can go to any country in the world and figure out if the housing there is overpriced. Okay, you go to Vietnam, when an average worker only makes $400 US dollars a month. You know, $400 US dollars a month, 400. Okay, so divided by a third, right? He can only afford about $100 or some dollars a month for his house. Okay, now then, however much that house costs in Vietnam. You see that? Same. Okay, so don't talk about the high amount of, you know, of house. You know, that's irrelevant. It's the ratio of how that is tied to the income. Okay, so with that, I'd like to end this video. Thank you for looking at my channel, and I'd like you guys to think deeply, go to the root of the issue and not just the surface. A lot of times, if you don't understand the root cause, you don't ask the right question, you're not going to come up with the right answer. And I see that a lot in our society, and that's why it compounds the problem. This is a big problem in our society. I expect something devastating is going to happen before things get better. That devastation could be a war with China, a collapse, complete collapse of our economic system, where you have a lot more violence than you do now. People will take out the streets and they start beating down, you know, buildings and start looting, which is already happening, right? But there's going to be even more than that, you know, if this is not resolved, or at least talk about. But no politicians talking about that right now. They don't know, and they don't care. That's the problem. You know, it's okay not to know. It's not okay not to want to know. See, you know, it's okay, you say, because nobody knows everything, right? But if you refuse to know, then you have a problem. Okay, then you don't want to improve anything. Then you shouldn't be a politician, right? You shouldn't be a leader. You shouldn't be working at all. If I have an employee that does that, I'm gonna fire him. I'm gonna say, well, then you're useless to me. You don't want to learn more. You don't want to learn more. You know, then you can't improve my business. If you can't improve my business, why should I pay you? Why should I keep you on a payroll? You know, so same thing here. You know, they need to do their job and really look at the situation at the root level, the root cause of things, and they all related. They all related. And the most critical right now is, of course, the safety of our children, right? That's the most critical. And the root cause of all that, like I told you before, is the cost of living is so high, and it's been so high now that after 30 years of this, people are fed up. You know, it affects the kids permanently, brain, you know. And so some of them will act out. Some of them will act out. So with that, thanks again for watching my channel, and I'll see you next time.